Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is the weekly chart of the Chinese currency versus the US dollar provided by netdania.com. You can click on the link below. Now you can see the trend of this currency pretty much is straight down. And so we can see that the dollar has lost going on 30% of its value against the Chinese currency since about 2006. Now, that's startling, but some of the figures I'm going to show you about GDP and other things are even more startling. The rapid decline in the United States, the rapid rise of China is just, it's absolutely shocking. It's the biggest story of this century. Of course, you're never going to hear about it in the mainstream media. So the story broke about Chinese gross national product. The big headline here is one from Forbes. They're the same everywhere in the media. China's cooling economy, GDP, fell to 7.5%. Will drop to 6.9% next year. Well, first thing I want to point out is that as you're growing and getting much larger, there's no way that you can continue to grow at the same percentages. If you do the simple math, you'll see that it's actually more of a steady rate of growth. It's just that as you get very large, this is true with any company, a Google or an Apple, you just can't keep growing once you get really, really big. China's starting to get big, and we'll see that in the figures that we look at here, but we'll read a little bit of this. The global economy may no longer be able to rely on China to be the growth engine it's been in the past. On Monday, China's official statistics agency announced the world's second largest economy grew 7.5% in the second quarter as industrial production and fixed asset investment continued to dip. China's GDP will probably average 7.5% this year, falling to 6.9% next year. Nomura forecasts indicate, which, given the size of China's economy, has important implications for global growth going forward. No hard landing for China, but continued growth contraction for several quarters to come, and on and on and on. So let's look at some of the facts of how rapidly China has grown. China's footstep has become increasingly important for the global economy as it's grown in size and share. China is now responsible for about 13% of global economic activity compared to 5% in 2006. So in just about 7 years, the amount of economic activity that China accounts for globally has nearly tripled in about 7 years. So in 7 years, by 2020, if it triples again, will China account for half of all global economic activity? I wouldn't bet against it. So let's look at some of the numbers now. Of course, the U.S. press, I've reported this story years running. They're always saying that China is slowing. China never slows. China continues to just absolutely pummel the United States and the rest of the world with their growth. And a lot of people are going to say, well, that they're fake numbers, and you can't trust anything that China says. Actually, I think it's much more likely that you can trust what China says than what you can trust the United States and the EU say. But I think I can demonstrate that. We're going to look at some information. But before we do that, we want to look at just the straight GNP numbers. So I've got two charts here from Trading Economics. You can see this is a chart of China's gross national product. If you go back to the year where this series starts, 1981, and it's to 2013, the figure here is about 5,000 at the beginning, and we're over 500,000. So China has grown its GNP more than 100-fold since 1981. Now, if we go over and look at the United States, you can see that since 1981, the GNP of about 6,000 is now 14,000, so more than doubled. So the United States has more than doubled in wealth, essentially, whereas China has grown 100-fold in wealth. And that's just one figure. I can bring up a lot of these figures. I can bring up any number of things. You've got GDP growth rate, you've got GDP per capita. They all pretty much tell the same story. China has been growing very, very rapidly. It is still growing rapidly, and the United States is falling behind, rapidly hurtling towards third world nation status, whereas China is rapidly hurtling towards first world, world power status, and there's no sign that the trend is going to change. So let's try to look at some anecdotal information. I know that people don't believe me when I report this. The only thing I can do is just try to show you, because people are in denial in the United States, the decline, what I think is probably the terminal decline of the United States now. It's reached a tipping point. So let's go over to Google Earth and just take a look at China. You have to get some boots on the ground and just get some idea. Now, remember, I've covered the Chinese cities. They're huge cities in China. They dwarf anything anywhere else in the rest of the world. But let's just go and look at Shanghai. And a lot of people say, well, China is filled with these tin shacks and things. Well, that's not true. So this is Shanghai, and you can see the gray area in Google Maps. That means highly developed areas, whereas with some of the green, those are suburban areas. So if we zoom in here to Shanghai, let's just take a look at some of the stuff that is in Shanghai. You can get pictures when you click on those little icons there. These are some pictures from Shanghai. There is from the coast, and these are some of the structures. You can see it's a beautiful city. You can see incredible skyscrapers, panorama views. There's the night sky of Shanghai. Here is an incredible image of modern, very modern, highly modern city. There is the port, and absolutely incredible wealth that is flowing into China. They have, look at these structures that they have. Now, this is just one spot. We can pick another spot here. Let's go to nearby another one of these. Here is another section of Shanghai, China. Very, very modern. You can see all the modern architecture. They have all these modern buildings. Here's a modern, looks like a mall or a subway. The train stations, of course, they have all the high-speed trains. You can see that everything is new. Everything's being built. There's no litter. Again, it's rapidly going past the United States. It already has surpassed the United States. I'm just trying to show you some boots on the ground views to show you that these numbers that we're seeing are actually real, that this is the growth that is going on in China. Here's the international airport in Shanghai. You can see a thoroughly modern airport, rivals or is better than any airports in the West. Tremendous buildings, infrastructure, very modern. And so you can go on Google Maps and see this stuff anywhere you want in China. And we have some pictures of the trains. Of course, I've already covered the high-speed trains in China. They're faster than anything anywhere else except for perhaps Japan. So that's just one city, one of the huge cities in China. They're rapidly modernizing, and as Jimmy Rogers has said, that the 21st century will be the century of China, just as the 20th century was the century of America, the 19th century was the century of England. So China is still growing, and the stories that are in the U.S. press, they are the same every year. They tell us that China is slowing down, and China isn't slowing down. So if you remember when Jimmy Rogers was interviewed, he said, you're probably not going to be able to profit directly from the growth in China because they have uh, restrictions on foreigners, and of course their currency hasn't floated yet. But what Jimmy Rogers did say is that if you can find something that the Chinese want and sell it to them, you'll probably be a billionaire. So this is my favorite coin. This is the Australian Lunar Series 2 uh, from the Perth Mint, and the reason why it's my favorite coin of all is because it has all of the things going for it that the Perth Mint coins have going for them. The fact that they're very, very high quality, uh, extremely difficult to counterfeit. They're all in individual plastic. A lot of them are very, very rare, and of course, the big story with these is that they're actually made to appeal to the Chinese. The Perth Mint's lunar theme has been secured for another 12 years with the introduction of the Australian Silver Lunar Series 2, created due to popular demand from international investors. The Australian Silver Lunar Series 2 began in 2008 with the Year of the Mouse and will end in 2019 with the Year of the Pig coins. Following the highly popular Australian Silver Lunar Series 1, the second series has also attracted attention from collectors and investors all over the world. The design for the Australian Silver Lunar Bullion Coin Series draws its inspiration from China's ancient lunar calendar. Central to the stories in the calendar are the 12 animals, each said to have a profound influence. So this is the Chinese lunar calendar that these coins are based on. I would imagine that the Chinese probably would highly value these coins, and in the future, I expect that the Chinese are probably going to have just about all the money, and they're going to be bidding for these coins. So I can't see a better deal when you look at silver, China, the Perth Mint. This seems to be a triple play on that, and that's why I'm so excited about those coins. Try to pick up as many as I possibly can. So back to the main story of the night. The China cooling story is a story that the phony American press has been running year after year after year after year. Whereas China has continued to grow year after year, the United States is completely stagnating, and probably if you put in the shadow stats information, the United States is declining and has been declining since 2008. You can see that on the currency chart. Currencies don't lie, and the dollar is falling against the Chinese currency. My expectation is the dollar will fall to 1 to the Chinese currency, and then become maybe much worth much less even after that. And that's my projection. So if you can get on the Chinese bandwagon and get invested in some Chinese bonds, that might be a good idea. But probably those Perth Mint silver coins are going to be one of the best China plays that you're going to see. And we'll talk to you next time.